Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for Caring Conversations, a free online discussion forum that offers a safe space for caregivers of people living with dementia to learn from experts, share concerns, and ask questions. This initiative is brought to you by the McGill University Dementia Education Program, which is supported by private donations. We'd like to thank the Petro-Canada Caremakers Foundation for supporting Caring Conversations. Our program offers a comprehensive range of free resources to educate and support people living with dementia, family and informal caregivers, healthcare professionals, medical students, and the public at large. We invite you to visit our website, mcgill.ca/dementia, where you can access many free multilingual resources. And now let's meet our moderators today. Lucy Barylak received her Master of Social Work from the McGill School of Social Work. She's developed evidence-based training for seniors and caregivers, and she's lectured in the field of social gerontology and presented at major conferences. Her research studies have been published in numerous journals. Ms. Barylak received the Queen's Jubilee Award for her role in developing a national coalition to support caregivers across Canada. Joanne Besner is an educator, professional coach, and caregiver. She received her Bachelor of Social Work and Master of Business Administration from McGill University. Her 35-year career in public community healthcare in Quebec spans many roles, including frontline case manager, clinical supervisor, researcher, and trainer. Today's topic is sandwich generation caregivers. A sandwich generation caregiver is responsible for caring for their own children as well as their aging parents or older dependents. On this episode of Caring Conversations, Lucy and Joanne will discuss the significant emotional, financial, and physical stress that sandwich generation caregivers may face as they juggle the needs of these two different generations. They will also discuss the role that grandparents may play in supporting their children in parenting. Lucy and Joanne will be joined by caregiver Janice Heft, who will share how this role has impacted her relationships. We ask that you please keep your microphones turned off. We will unmute people as needed once we open the discussion period. Please note that we're recording today's webinar and it will be posted on the Caring Conversations page of our website within the next week or two. Thank you. Ladies, please go ahead.
We are definitely multitaskers, and I'm wondering how many of you in our audience today are doing double duty. So as I said, let's start with the numbers. In 2022, and this comes from Statistics Canada, 13.4 million Canadians aged 15 years and older, that's over 2 in 5 persons in this age group, provided unpaid care in the previous year to children younger than 15 years old or to youth aged 15 years and older and adults with a long-term condition or disability. Of these unpaid caregivers, 13% provided care to both of these care-dependent groups, meaning that 1.8 million Canadians older than 15 years were sandwiched between multiple care responsibilities. So, 13% were sandwich caregivers. They were predominantly female, and the largest group, 35 to 44 years old, followed by 45 to 54 years old, and 55 to 64 years old. So now I want to introduce today's guest, Janice Heft, an intelligent and insightful person, care partner, and a friend. She is a former lawyer, retired community worker, and mother of 4. Her experience with caregiving began with supporting her mom, who was caregiver for 16 years to Janice's father after he suffered a stroke. And then she became primary caregiver to her mom, now living with Alzheimer's disease. Janice, welcome to our webinar, and thank you for being with us. Can you start by telling us a little about your mom and your care partner role?
Thank you, Joanne. That was a beautiful introduction, and a beautiful introduction to my mother too, who, as you can understand, took care of everybody. Before Well, my father had a stroke, her mother was sick too, and my mother was always the most capable person, always in charge, and always took care of everyone. And uh, now she's been living with Alzheimer's for somewhere between 8 to 10 years that I know of. And she is still unwilling to acknowledge that anything is wrong with her or that she can't do anything. That being said, she, although she still likes to be in control, she did at one point several years ago ask me to help her with her finances. She did put me on her bank account. She did prepare a mandate a long time ago. So she was very forward thinking. And I do think that probably before 10 years ago, she knew, she had an idea of what was happening and took steps. I'll also share that when I asked her to give up her car, she said no. And then about a month later, she looked at me and she handed me her car keys. So I guess as I said, she still thinks she can take care of herself and take care of everything. But she did have insights into what she had to give up. So it's very hard because she uh, doesn't want me to be her caregiver. She doesn't want to listen to what anyone asks her to do, even if it's just, take a shower or brush her teeth. So that's my mother. Still can't can't figure out what to wear on a given day, but she's still in charge of everything.
I love how you describe her and her personality. And really, Janice, I know about your journey. Maybe you can share a little bit about. I also feel the pride you have
Mhm.
for her, but that comes with a lot of difficulties. The struggle between her asserting her independence and her strong personality. How is that for you?
Um, it's very hard because uh, I have to remember that when I ask her to get ready and she says, "No, I'm not going," and we have an appointment in a half an hour and I've been waiting for her for an hour already. Um, I can't yell at her because it's not her talking, it's the disease. I think you taught me that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's good you recognize that. That's
and
what we do.
I have on occasion lost my cool with her. And she forgets in 30 seconds. And for me, it takes me a week to get over it.
Wow. Thank you so much for your honesty with that too.
And we'll hear
Um,
more about the rest of the family
yeah,
impact when we get
yeah.
there.
So we're going to talk a lot about, through our themes, but we also want Lucy. You also were a sandwiched caregiver. Can you also share a little bit about your mom and you were a mom and caring for your mom?
Yes. I was a care partner for my mother for over 10 years. Going to go a little bit deeper, give you a bit of a history, because that's sort of going to put it all together. My mother was a single mother, and I was an only child. We immigrated to Canada when I was 7 years old. We had no family or friends in Montreal. We only had each other. We lived in a rooming house on City Hall, and, she worked long hours in a factory. But the time we spent together was very precious to me. My mother was kind, loving, independent woman who gave me unconditional love. She was my rock. When I started caring for my mother, I was married, I had 2 children at home, and I worked full-time in the healthcare system. My work was focused on developing services for caregivers through research as well as supporting my clients who were caregivers. I really don't think that people can understand what caregivers are going through until you walk in their shoes. As my mother's medical and cognitive issues declined, my role as a care partner increased. I don't have to tell you. Shopping, cooking, cleaning, laundry, taking her to appointments, and my emotional roller coaster increased as well. I felt like I was really on a roller coaster ride. I found myself thinking about her more during the day, evening, and at night. I would call her more often, visit more often, while trying to keep a quote, happy family life and give 100% at work. And sometimes I wasn't doing a very good job. I think my kids felt it, and definitely my husband. I finally realized that I was having a difficult time balancing my life, my children, my husband, my work, as well as my own needs and my own wants. It was a very difficult time, and I needed help in order to get off the treadmill before I actually fell off it. I did reach out to the CLSC, and that at the time, many years ago, I did receive some support of home help, but obviously not enough. But I want to share that my mother always told me that she wants to stay at home, in her own home. My family, we were glad to have her living with us. The problem was she smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. At that time, my youngest daughter had severe asthma attacks, and so that was impossible. But I want to tell you that I did keep my mother in her home, 24-hour help, but the financial and emotional toll cost was really overwhelming. But I do have to tell you that I don't regret what I did. And I feel a sense of peace in my heart that I was able to keep my promise. I also realized that I could not do this alone, and I had to allow myself the opportunity to let other people help me. This wasn't easy for me. I always thought no one can take care of my mom like I do, or be there for her, or the kind of food she liked. She came from a European background. So I guess what I want to say on this journey, even though I was a social worker working with caregivers, I really had to learn to recognize that I really could not do this alone and not isolate myself.
Lucy, I'm always touched by your story, and thank you for sharing it. And we're starting this way because we really want to honor these two women, Janice's mom and Lucy's mom, before we go into a little bit more detail and questions. So the interesting thing, if you look on this slide in the 3 age groups, Janice pointed this out to me when we were talking, that all 3 of us are not in any of these 3 age groups. We're actually a little bit older than that. And we're going to shift the discussion to the element of grandparenting, and I have a feeling that these statistics might shift over the next few years as well. Because we want to bring in this aspect. What about the grandparents? In the context of today's changing society with economics and the labor market and childcare options, more and more grandparents are playing a greater role in supporting their children in their parenting. So we're adding even another layer in this sandwich. Both parents work today. Children need daycare, sometimes transportation, relief, coverage on sick days. And I share this with you because I live it. I'm currently very involved with my 3 grandchildren's care, supporting my daughter and her husband. There's a new baby, and I assist with childcare, school pickups, shopping, among other tasks, aside from being a caregiver to my own mother. So if we look at this whole other element of intergenerational bonding and the benefits, I just want to read the first paragraph on the slide. While young children and grandparents have different needs, they have much to offer each other. Bringing different generations together can foster stronger family bonds, facilitate the sharing of skills and family history, and improve families' overall well-being. Well, we're talking about feeling sandwich caregiving, but isn't this the ultimate blessing? Imagine 4 generations. I cherish being able to see my parents become great-grandparents and have my grandchildren know them. And while young children and grandparents have very different needs, they have a lot to offer each other. And sometimes even having dual visits could cover caregiving at the same time and bring joy to everyone and improve overall family well-being. It also models to our children and grandchildren how to provide love and support across the generations. So I'm going to bring this aspect in, and Janice, I'm going to turn to you because you became a grandmother 2 years ago. So I'm wondering, can you share with us how has, on top of everything you're doing with your mom, caring for her, how has this new role impacted your caregiving for your mom?
So let me just tell you that in the pandemic, I got laid off from my job in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I got a call from my mother's doctor that they were diagnosing her with Alzheimer's. So that was a lovely day. But, that went on. And then my daughter got married and had a baby. And my mother was still pretty much able to do things, or so I thought at the time. And I thought, this is going to be great because one of the things that she and I can do together is spend time with this baby, because, they were like on the same level from time to time. They could coo at each other for hours. And I thought, this is going to be great. It's really good for my mother. And it's so good to see her full of joy with all that she's going through. So one day my daughter asked me to babysit late in the day so she could go out with her friends. And of course I brought my mother because, for the last 15 years, I did everything with my mother. She was my best friend. And we went over, and then the baby started to cry. And the baby would not stop crying, and baby would not take a bottle. The baby would not take a pacifier. I didn't know what to do. And my mother kept giving me instructions. Give the baby the sis, give the baby the pacifier, give the baby the bottle, the baby this. And she would repeat them over and over again. And I was trying to calm down the baby, and I could literally feel my blood pressure rising. And I realized I can't do this. My dream of, me and my mother, helping my daughter with this baby crashed that afternoon. And I actually had to call her to come home because I couldn't take care of both of them. So, now if I do anything with my mother and the baby, or either the babies, one of my daughters is either with us or very close by.
Thank you for sharing that story. It's very moving. Yeah, and it
Yeah.
really shows that we have this great fantasy and intergenerational bonding is beautiful, but the realities of the disease and what it's like, this is exactly what we're talking about today. Thank you for sharing that, Janice. So going forward, I do want to get more into the emotions, and we're going to focus actually on 3 elements of being that sandwiched caregiver. One, starting with fatigue. We're going to talk about emotional strain and financial strain as well. So starting with fatigue. Doing double duty at both ends, it's exhausting. You have your own life, everything you have to do to maintain yourself, your health, your home. If you have a partner, and besides that, you may be working, and add on to that, you're caregiving for your adult parents or siblings and taking care of your kids and helping taking care of their kids. How many hours are there in a day? So it goes without question, this can be exhausting. And I know we all think we're so capable and it's also very, particularly for women, we are taught we need to do it all. We believe we can do it all. I know for myself, there have been times when I woke up in the morning after a very good night's sleep, a full night's sleep, and I wake up and I feel so exhausted and I wonder why? Why am I feeling so tired? And then I look back on the previous day and what I have done between work and caregiving, and it makes sense. Janice, have you ever felt like that? This exhaustion?
All the time. I wake up in the morning and I think about where I'm going to fit my children and their children in, and my mother. And when, like, the part of this part of thinking about what I'm going to do with my mother when I spend time with her, uh, it's never really as long as I would hope to, because by the time I'm finished with her or been with her a half an hour, I'm exhausted. It's a lot of emotional control and a lot of, answering the same question over and over again, and just figuring out how to keep her happy and moving forward without her yelling at me. And it's very tiring.
Yeah.
And one day, actually, about 2 weeks ago, I was planning to go over to her house. I said, okay, I'm going to lie down on my bed for a few minutes at 11:30. And I fell asleep in the middle of the day, the middle of the morning.
Yeah. Okay, I think that says it all. Lucy, what about you?
Well, yes, all that Janice was saying, fatigue is a big one, but I have to share with you that, and maybe others can relate, a lot of fatigue was around, even though my husband was a very caring, had a great relationship with my mother. He really loved her. It was like the expectations of that relationship and being a wife and keeping that going was exhausting, I have to say. And many times it sort of, it touched on the relationship, even though it was strong and bounding. I think it's something that is important to keep in mind. How do you balance all that? The kids, okay, I could do things with, but I felt like, for example, we went away on a weekend and it was supposed to be very relaxing. I wasn't relaxed. I was so tired that all I wanted to do was just to relax. So I think for all of you, all caregivers, if you have a partner and if you have, you're in a relationship, we have to make sure that on top of everything else, that is going smoothly as well.
Can I
Yeah,
just say something to what you said, Lucy?
yeah. Go ahead, Janice.
I never feel relaxed anymore.
I get it.
Never.
Yeah, totally
Ay,
understand that. I totally can understand that. Because our minds play tricks on us, even though we might pretend and we're sitting having coffee with a friend or whatever, it's always there behind. And that's one of the things that Joanne and I really feel so strongly about these sessions that we have, to give ourselves permission. We're allowed to think of ourselves and the tips of how we can manage those feelings
yeah.
so they don't escalate.
And also I'm thinking exhaustion also makes you you're exhausted, so you're more reactive. Janice, you shared sometimes you'll lose it with your mom. But a lot of times that comes from being exhausted and the constant stress that you're saying, not feeling relaxed is exhausting. And again, I think we can all relate to those feelings. So thank you for that. Being exhausted also leads to emotional strain. Not just feeling physically bad or needing a nap in the middle of the day, but it can affect our mental health. And this is where stress can show up. And we do have to be very vigilant and pay attention to our mental health and make sure we keep ourselves healthy and we don't let ourselves, I think, Lucy, it was it was someone's, we don't want to let ourselves crash. And there's so many emotions we could discuss, but I want to focus on guilt, particularly, and you see in front of you almost a tug of war, but particularly the guilt of feeling like you're never in the right place if you're caregiving at both ends, not to mention your work and all that. So if you're with the kids or your children or grandchildren, caring for them, you're thinking you should be with your parent. And if you're with your parent, you should be helping with the kids. So you can feel like you're just never in the right place. You have to leave one group for the other group. And it really is a tug of war. It could be so easy to lose yourself, to get stressed, to feel sad. And just everybody here, if you're feeling that way, just know this is normal, but it's a risk factor to pay attention to. I have to share something. I was going to go to you, Janice, but I want to share this thing that just happened to me literally a half an hour before coming on the webinar. I have just been away for 2 weeks on vacation, and all three of my grandchildren are sick, and my daughter got sick too. And she just literally called me a half an hour before this webinar. She can barely talk. She said, "Ma, I'm not doing well. Please, can you come and help me?" And I'm feeling like, oh my God, I want to drop everything, run over there and help her. Two of the kids are, thank God, in school. She's there with the baby is sick. She's sick, but I can't do that. And ironically, and I was supposed to see my mom, be with my mom this afternoon because I've been away for 2 weeks. So I'm feeling like this so ironic. We have this webinar because this is exactly, I think, what we're all talking about. I had to say to my daughter, look, I can't drop. I'm actually going to drop everything. I'm going to have to give up my mother's visit and explain to her because the priority today will be my daughter. Janice, could you relate to this at all? Do you ever feel like you're in a tug of war?
Every moment. I actually had an appointment with my mother one day, and my daughter called me and said, could I help her? And I said, I already have a plan with my mother. She said, change it. Your priorities are wrong. And, like everything else, what did I do? I cried. Then I changed the appointment and I went to my daughter, I mean. But, it's a question. Who's the priority?
Who's the priority? Ouch, that hurts to hear that from a daughter. That hurts. Wow.
Yeah. I know, I'm not sure she was right. Because she could have done what she did without me. My mother can't anymore.
Yeah. But so it's interesting, the need though, and the relationship. I'm sure our children can manage without us, but we become such a support and a comfort and a respite for them as well. So not being able to have it, I'm sure can make them also react with exhaustion. Yeah.
I can relate to that, Janice. It's especially with my kids, but they were much younger than your daughter. The whole idea of like they wanted me there, and I was off doing something with my mother. So I think it's important to keep in mind that there is resentment because in the reality, a person who has a disease, any form, it affects the whole family. It doesn't just affect the immediate caregiver. And I think it is important to look at that and to maybe find a way of trying to deal with it. Having the kids have and adult children having an opportunity to voice their discontent with what's going on. I want you now. You're my mother, these are your grandchildren.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the things I've always admired about you, Joanne, is that you have this wonderful kind of relationship with your siblings to talk about caregiving and to be able to share responsibilities. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that keep in mind that everyone in the family, regardless of who is in that, is affected. And sometimes it's not even the immediate family. It could be the sister of your mother or the aunt that was always involved. So these are all the difficult things that arise when we are caring for someone.
So I think we could talk about emotions probably for the whole webinar, but I don't want to neglect the important financial piece. So we're going to look at that a little bit because the financial demands can be significant. Many caregivers report experiencing stress, anxiety, or depression, and some even have to tap into personal savings to cover caregiving costs. We know how much caregiving costs at home, equipment, supplies, paying for some extra help. The National Institute on Aging found that 45% of caregivers spent an additional $1,000 monthly from their own resources in order to provide care. Now, Lucy, you live this. So I know our listeners would really appreciate to hear what this entailed for you and how you dealt with it.
Yes, big strain. Well, the thing is that I decided, and it doesn't mean, I think I did it, it was right for me and my mother to keep her at home. But the CLSC only had a certain amount of hours when you're talking, and I think if I remember right, it was maybe, it sounds a lot, maybe 42 hours a week, but she needed 24 hours a day. On a personal level, my mother lived in a low-cost housing. She had no savings whatsoever. I had to go and get a loan. I really did. And that was how I managed it. Now, I was paying off this loan even after my mother had passed away. So this is a bit of an, I'm hoping not everyone is in that position, but it was overwhelming. It really, really was. And in many ways, I kind of had to take ownership of it on my own because I didn't want it to affect my family lifestyle, let's put it that way. So, my husband kind of took care. Whatever we shared before. But this particular one, I took it upon myself. But I always felt so strongly that she was there for me always. She took care of me, and it was my role. But I do have to say, it was really, really bad. I paid it off for quite a few years.
Yeah.
I'm sharing very personal things that I really don't share with too many people, but I thought it was important to do so.
Yeah. No, and I'm sure our listeners really appreciate that because that is, you have generosity of the heart as a caregiver, but generosity, taking a loan, I think is it's an exceptional act that really spoke what you wanted to do for your mom, despite the stress that you lived through. Just a few more facts about financial cost of caring. We know it can be a struggle as what you described, but also some people have to take time off work and stop working, and this impacts their income. Now, there's eligibility and benefits like the child tax benefit, the Canada caregiver credit, childcare subsidies, and some companies even are able to offer leaves. But I think, as you said, Lucy, care is 24, eventually becomes 24/7, and it's not covered. And in Quebec, because we know there's people here from across Canada and also internationally, but in Quebec, there are local CLSCs, local community organized centers. And today, wait lists just to get an evaluation are huge. And then there are wait lists for a first service due to budget and staff shortages like never before. So this is a reality. And I do want to share that about a month ago, I did hear or read in the news that there is in Quebec, which will be very interesting, a new benefit has been passed. And this has been debated for a while, but they will be paying certain family members who give care at home $21 per hour. So it'll be very interesting to see how this is rolled out and who is eligible for this benefit. So this is another reason we have to keep talking about it and advocating about our role for care partners, so that people don't have to take time off work and don't have to take loans on. Thank you for sharing about that, Lucy. And moving on to family dynamics, it's not always Ozzie and Harriet or the Dick Van Dyke Show, or all these families who get along so perfectly. Let's face it, every caregiver has a family history, and some of that history may be unpleasant, disappointing, or even abusive. So we want to recognize the difficulty for caregivers who didn't have good relationships and who even maybe had abusive relationships. So you might be feeling like, oh, I should be a devoted caregiver, but I'm feeling unable. Or I should forgive, but I just can't move beyond the past. So yes, the studies show that the keys to healthy caregiving is to try and develop that habit of gratitude and let go of hurt pasts. But we do want to acknowledge that's not always possible. One piece of advice we always say is just watch where you put your energy. If you can't change something, be careful where you put your energy, because we talked about fatigue as a sandwich caregiver. This is a hard topic to share online because it's so private, but I can share with you that we have clients that share with us how difficult it is in their situation, and several family members we have now, we are helping them even disengage from the caregiving process just because it's the only way for their survival. Also, another point to mention is about young carers. Keep in mind, for young families where their parents are in their 50s and 60s and are very actively helping them with their children, imagine when their parent gets a diagnosis of dementia and your parent was your helper. That becomes a double loss. You lose your helper and now you need to help them. So I don't know, there may be some people in the audience who are experiencing that as well now, caring for the parent who was their helper. And then finally, we're going to end our presentation and open it up to the audience. But we want to, so what do we need? What do sandwich caregivers need? And from the literature gives us the following. Of course, we need personal support, which can mean so many things, but hands-on help and support, emotional, psychological support. Flexible work options is a big one. Some people have jobs, whatever, 9 to 5. You cannot leave your job. This makes caregiving extremely stressful. One thing, Lucy and I were very fortunate. We worked in the domain of social services where caregiving was recognized. And Lucy, I recall at times, in the drop of a hat, Lucy had to drop everything, run out the door. Our employer was very understanding. We could make up the time, and we had policies. So that's very important. Educational resources. DEP is Dementia Education Program. You're all here present with us. This is key to help sandwich caregivers. Financial subsidies, which we've touched upon. But I also want to say societal recognition is so, so important. One of the things I love seeing, I hope this is across Canada and other places, there have been radio and television campaigns on caregivers. And I find it very important because those who aren't living this have no idea. If you're not going through something, and even if, that the statistics are so high, it's very important that we sensitize our younger and upcoming populations, because we know if you're not a caregiver now, eventually you will become a caregiver. So we are going to personally share our tips, Janice, Lucy, and I. I'm just going to summarize 6 crucial tips from the literature. We know there's so many, but one, so easy to say, so difficult to do. We need to make a conscious decision to make more time for ourselves. You're the only one who can give yourself self-care. You need to be honest, look at your situation and say, I need to make time for myself. Plan ahead, a very important one. Be in the moment. Remember, especially with that tug of war, you can't do everything at once. When you're with your children or your spouse, be with them. It's horrible to spend time thinking about that you're not with your mom or your dad or your sister and vice versa. So just try to be at wherever you are at that moment. Try and be there. Lose the guilt. Guilt is a big one. We have caring conversations on guilt if you want to check those out. Because how many jobs can you do at once? And I'm really feeling for Janice when she says she's just never relaxed because there's always the one to go to. Lucy, you alluded to this. Ask for help. You don't have to do this alone. And of course, take care of your container, your physical body. Eat, sleep, and exercise. So I wanted to just go to each one of us and share the tip that helps them the most. I'm going to start by saying, for me, it's planning. I start with, I plan. Otherwise, I can never balance my work, my mother's care needs, my children and grandchildren's care needs, my partner's needs, the house, etc. So I plan vigilantly. But I start with myself. I schedule in my priorities first, work, fitness, and then I schedule in my dual caregiving activities, and then the rest. And this helps me to be in the moment and avoid overwhelm. And Lucy, you talked about resentment. This helps me not have resentment because I make sure to put in that time for myself. And I don't think that's selfish. This is my lifesaver. So that's my tip for you. And then Janice, I'm going to go, what is the thing that helps you the most? Keep it all together.
I try and exercise as many days a week as I can because if I'm focusing on my physical activity, that's the only place my brain is for an hour. So I get that hour, sometimes a little more of relief where I'm thinking only of exactly what I'm doing, and that's my moment. My moment is that hour. But I can tell you that very shortly after, I'm switching back and I'm trying to make a plan. So when I stopped working, I thought, oh, I'm going to have all this time to spend with my mother while I still can, and all this time to do all those other things. But I can't. I have to have a plan. And whatever plan I have with my mother, if under normal circumstances it should be an hour and a half, I need to give it 4 hours because I need to give her time to be elsewhere or wherever she is in her head. And I think I like the way you put lose the guilt, but I don't know if that's ever possible.
Yeah. Easier said than done, right, Janice?
Right. Yeah.
It is.
What about you, Lucy?
Well, for me, I think the hardest thing for me was to ask for help. Okay. Remember, my story is that it was the two of us. Okay. We didn't have family. But I'm so lucky that I had the most amazing friends. But it was hard for me to ask for help. And I'm thinking about it like, why? Why was it? For many reasons. Because number one, I thought that I should be able to do all of it. Okay. The second thing was I was reluctant to ask my friends for help. I didn't want to impose on them. But once I did, I realized how much they really wanted to, honestly. And it was easier when I would say, like, I would ask them, do you mind? They really did like my mom. She's a very social person. Do you mind staying with my mom for an hour or two? And they would say, yes, great. What else do you want? So I really think that a lot of caregivers, and we know that from the literature too, have a hard time asking for help. And so please reach out to people that you know. Um, Tell them what you need. I think they would welcome it. And it made life easier for me once I was able to do that.
Thank you for sharing that great tip, Lucy. So that's going to bring our presentation or our sharing with you to a close. And we really want to hear from you. What's your experience as a sandwich caregiver? Tell us if you've ever felt torn between the two sides. So I'm going to stop sharing our slides and I'm going to turn to Diane. And Diane, is there anything in the chat to share? And also, please, I see
Yes.
we already have a hand up.
We have Claire. We also have 5 questions and comments in the chat as well. But Claire, please go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for this amazing webinar. And for those of you that may not know me, so I founded the McGill University Dementia Education Program because of my experience as a sandwich generation caregiver and having suffered a severe burnout. And just listening to you, I mean, everything resonates. And with regards to the tips, I have to say the one thing that I would add is, I suffered a significant burnout, not only from being a caregiver, but just because of life's responsibilities and as a woman, all the pressure that we put on ourselves and other life issues. But I think what I had to do was really do a triage of my life and say what's working and what's not working. Who are the people in my life that are giving me positive energy and who aren't? Really pick, every time I was invited to do something, whether that would be socially or participate in a volunteer thing, if it wasn't working, I had to let it go. I had to learn to say no. I had to learn to, say yes to help. But it really was about I didn't have a lot of energy. So where was I going to put it? Who was I going to give my energy to, and who was I not going to give my energy to? And when I give my talks, I often say it's hard sometimes to set boundaries with family members. But you can always agree to do a lunch instead of a dinner. Try to shorten the time that you spend with certain people. And there were certain friends in my life who would say, "Oh, what's the drama going on in your life this week?" And I had to remove those people from my life and really wake up every day and say, where am I putting my energy, towards whom and towards what? Because you can't do it all. And the energy drainers I really had to let go of. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you very much. And Janice, it's nice to see you. It's been a long time I haven't seen you. So thank you for participating today.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Claire. For those of you who don't know Claire Webster, she is the founder of the Dementia Education Program. So she is the reason why we are all here together today sharing. So I'm just going to raise a few of the comments and questions that have been beautifully shared in the chat. I just wanted to share this comment because I found it really relevant. So I've learned every day, sometimes hour by hour, what's the bigger yes? Everything can be a valid concern, but there's only so much energy that we can give as caregivers. So I know you already talked about that. Just a beautiful reminder of the importance of prioritizing, even though it can be difficult. So we had a question to discuss the impact of family dysfunction and estrangement between siblings in the care of parents. Before you answer, I'm just going to also post in the chat a caring conversation that you ladies did in January 2025 on the topic of conflict between caregivers, because that's really a great resource if anyone is struggling with this. I'm going to post that in the chat right now.
Yeah. Maybe I'll make a comment. Please watch the webinar because it's a huge topic, and that's why we did mention about it. Some people are primary and sole caregivers, and I believe that applies to Lucy and to Janice. They can correct me if I'm wrong. I am a caregiver with my brother and my sister. And the pros and cons, if you're alone caregiving, you don't run into any conflict. but it's all on you. It's very heavy not to have anyone to share it with. And when you have others, we don't always see everything the same way. And having the ability to communicate and share the views is key. If you cannot manage it on your own, get help to do it. There are a lot of counselors out there, social workers, to help families communicate, because it's hard enough being a caregiver than having to deal with the family dynamics. Realistically, that's why I shared, we have families with very complex dynamics. And at the worst end of the spectrum, sometimes you have to pull yourself out for survival. And that sometimes is the only way. So whatever you're going through, turn to the educational resources, but about your particular situation, please consult help. It will make a big difference if you can just come to some acceptable way of functioning together. Lucy, did you want to add anything? Or
No, you said it all about the conflicts, supposedly. But I guess what I want to say is that we always do share this, Joanne and I. And so to remind us that it's a balancing act. One does not outweigh the other. Okay? You have to take care of yourself if you want to continue caring for the person that you're caring for.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask the next question. What kind of supports with respect to skill building and validating the experience did you receive or take advantage of during this journey? And also just to mention that this type of exhausted isn't rejuvenated by sleep alone. So just if you can share a little bit, maybe what some of the resources that you had access to as caregivers.
I don't know, Janice, if you want to say anything on this.
So, like I said, I was really lucky with the timing because I just had all this time in front of me. The first thing I did was I called AGI, Alzheimer's Group, because I had a colleague who had worked there, and I went there and I met with a counselor, and for 2.5 hours I sat and I talked and I cried. And that was very cathartic because it was like I wasn't leaning on the same family members over and over again, and I just got to let it all out. She gave me some tips. She just let me speak everything that I needed to say, and that was very helpful. Then I signed up for their Alzheimer's 101 course, and that was very helpful. I think it was a 2 or 3 part course, and then I took their second course. And then I had them as a resource to call every time I had a question. Oh, and the second person I called was Claire Webster, by the way. She was also very helpful and gave me some tips, and I spoke to her more than once when I needed advice and needed help. And then, of course, there was you, Joanne, who was very helpful to me. So I appreciate that. I also had a group of friends going through the same thing. So I had a little support group, which was also very helpful because, again, I wasn't leaning on my husband all the time and, bringing him down with me. I had other people who understood better what I was going through. And then I moved my mother to Place Kensington, and I have to say that one of the administrators there was quite helpful with me and encouraging me to get extra help for my mother, which I was always reluctant to do. But she just said she can't be doing this on her own anymore. And with a lot of encouragement, I brought in outside help.
Thank you for
Those
sharing
are
those.
my primary resources. So thank
you.
all of you who are here who supported
And
me.
I think it's really, you really were proactive, and that's a really great example for our participants. I want to add one thing. And if you want to consult in our webinars on positive intelligence, because the writer said you know, what resources. Mindfulness, meditation, positive intelligence is another one, but finding ways, like Janice, you said, you exercise, you can clear your head. But there are skills that we can learn to self-regulate, to calm ourselves, to regulate our emotions. That can also make a difference. So check out the positive intelligence webinar as well. And I see there's a raised hand, and Diane, I'm going to leave it to you to coordinate the rest of the chat on this, Cassandra.
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, we don't have too much time left. Cassandra, before you ask your question, I just wanted to mention there was a comment about how to take vacation, because we know that's a difficult challenge. There's an organization called Baluchon Répit. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they can help with that. So I'm going to post the link for that in the chat. And Cassandra, please go ahead and ask your question.
I'm not a caregiver. I'm a recreation therapist in Newfoundland that works with caregivers and persons living with dementia in community. And it's great that Janice had so many resources out there. However, there's limited resources in rural Newfoundland and other rural places. And certainly, knowing people such as Joanne and Claire is privilege. And it's not accessible to everybody, right? So how would you kind of give someone some advice if those resources weren't at arm's reach?
I don't know if someone else wants to add, but I would say this is where I would, we have the advantage of going online. There are there's dementia education program. We showed the second slide at the beginning. There are a lot of online resources. There's online support groups, online counseling. So off the top of my head, I mean, in a way, that's what the gift the pandemic gave us is because you bring up such an important point about rural areas and the lack of resources. So that would be my give, and connecting with others. I like the way, Janice, you created your own little support group. So maybe others in rural communities too, who really understand that isolation. That's what comes to my mind. Anybody else?
Unfortunately, in some of these rural areas too, there's limited either service or internet access or just general access to like computers or the knowledge to use computers. I feel like I'm in a very surrounded by educated people, right?
Yeah.
And these individuals are, maybe just high school or don't even have a high school education. So to join something like this, they wouldn't maybe not even understand the dialogue that is happening and the vocabulary that is used. I'm just
yeah, you're right. The only thing I can think of is advocacy. Letting our governments know this is the situation, because that's awful feeling, isolated, little support. You describe a very challenging situation. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Right. Well, I'm very sorry, but I'm going to have to wrap up today's episode of Caring Conversations. I want to start by thanking Janice Heft for joining us today. Janice, thank you so much for sharing your very personal story. And of course, Joanne and Lucy, we always enjoy hearing what you have to say. So thank you. And to all of you who are joining from home during this snowy day, thank you for being with us for this episode. I have posted a link in the chat that talks about gathering your feedback. We always like to know what you think. We wish we had more time to answer all the questions, so we're looking at maybe extending the time in future so that there's more time for questions. Our next Caring Conversation will take place on April 29th. Topic to be determined. So we'll share information in our newsletter. Please be sure to sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already. And just a reminder that Caring Conversations is a project of the McGill University Dementia Education Program, which is funded entirely by private donations. Please visit our website at mcgill.ca/dementia to learn more. Thank you so much, everyone, and take good care.
Thank you, everybody. Take
Thank
care.
you. Take care. Be well.
Thanks, Janet.